Hello, this is Reindeer's Bees, and today we're going to talk about Southern and Northern beekeeping, the advantages and the disadvantages. The general consensus that I've heard is that beekeeping in the north is much harder than in the south, and this isn't always what people say, but generally on YouTube that's what I seem to hear. And I don't really think this is true. I think they're both challenging in their own distinct ways, and so I'm just going to go through, 3 or 4 main topics about the differences. So the season is really short in the north. It's very compressed, not at all like the south. The south's a long, long season. I'm talking about north and south generally, but as you go north, there are some places kind of in between. So in my area, we only get 5 to 6 months of inspection weather. That'd be from like mid-April to late September, early October. So that means we get 6 to 7 months of winter, technically not during the winter season, but cold months. From mid-October to April, we generally have nights that dip into freezing temperatures. This can be challenging on the bees. Our first pollen comes in the Northeast. I think the earliest pollen comes in like mid-March, and up where I live, it starts in the last week of March, first week of April. Places in northern Maine or on the Great Lakes, those the pollen might not start till late April, early May. Another very important distinction from the south between the north is that in the north, the summer temperatures are much cooler than in the south. So those, months of scorchingly hot days, a lot of them over 90, it doesn't happen like that here in most of the Northeast. It can in certain parts, but it's not nearly as common as in the South. Where I live on the coast, some years we don't even get more than 7 days above 90. And our hottest time of the year is I looked, and I think it's like the last week of July and the first week of August. After the first week of August, it starts to cool down. And this allows us to use different light treatments than in the south, because even in our hottest times of the year, it's almost in the temperature range for treatments. So most of the summer we're able to use Formic Pro, full doses of Apigard. Those treatments can be used still here during the summer. And so this not as hot weather puts a lot less stress on the bees. They don't have to get as much water. They're not doing nearly as much fanning. There's less bearding. All of that happens a lot less than in the south. So it's just easier on our bees during the summer. And it's easier on the beekeeper. I mean, who wants to go outside when it's over 90 degrees? And in the south, they have a lot more humidity generally. And I grew up in Memphis, and oh my gosh, it was so hot and so humid. I can still remember it. So mite management wise, I would say it's very, north to south is very different. Whilst in both places you need to keep your mite loads low throughout the season, you have much more time to get it done in the south than in the north. The northeastern honeybees generally start making winter bees in August to early September. And even earlier than August in really northern places. And so the mites feed on the fat bodies of the bees, and the fat body of the winter bee is much more developed and prominent than the summer bee. And this is what allows them to live over 6 months instead of 6 weeks or 7 weeks like a summer bee. So when the mites eat that fat body and weaken them and put viruses into those winter bees, they aren't going to be able to live as long as they need to make it through the entire winter. That's going to be really challenging for them. And so that means they'll die, the hive will die, they'll be very weak in the spring and be pretty much useless. In the south, mites can still absolutely kill your colony. But you have more time to treat before it's too late. If they treat after the honey flow, they still have, after the summer honey flow, they normally still have months to test and treat for mites again before the winter bees are starting to be made. they have much more time to deal with the mites before it becomes detrimental to their winter bees. That being said, mite management also is more challenging in the South because they have more mites, because they have brood almost all of the year in a lot of places, and they have less treatment options because of the high temperatures. So those are two challenges of mites. Since we have such a long period of cold, we get brood breaks from November to February every year, and that way we can hit our bees with oxalic acid to kill the mites. But in the South, unless you're running more carniolan stock or you're in, more northern part of the South, you may not get a brood break. And if you do, it's going to be a lot shorter than the one in the North is. And the oxalic acid when they're broodless is a very effective way that's easy on the bees to kill a lot of mites. I think one of the most prominent differences between southern and northern beekeeping is from the time that our first pollen comes in till the honey flow. So here in Maine where I live, our first pollen normally comes in the last week of March or first week of April more commonly. And our honey flow starts in early May. So that's pretty much a month, at best a month and a half of buildup before our main honey flow. And it's pretty cold still in that time as well. So it's harder for the bees to expand because it's just colder at night, especially. Whereas in the South, a lot of them have over 2 months. Let's say, right now, Cayman Reynolds is putting out videos and he got his first pollen 2 weeks ago or whatever, a week and a half ago. His flow, he said, even in early years, only starts at the end of March. So he has at least 2 months for his bees to build up in warmer weather than the North till the honey flow. So they have a lot more time to split, to grow their colonies before the honey flow starts. And so that is a challenge of living in the North. Your season is more compressed and you have way less time. So the last prominent difference is the South has longer dearth periods than the North. So here in the North, since our season's shorter, where I live, our flow cuts off first or second week of July, and we don't have much pollen for about 2 weeks. I wouldn't call it a full dearth, but I would still say that there's less pollen. And then in late July, we get infinite pollen starting from the goldenrod till October. So that our pollen's taken care of for all that time. But from the first or second week of July till September, we have zero nectar, absolutely none. And so in good years, we'll have a fall flow, but some years we don't have any nectar from the first or second week of July till the next year. If our honey flow doesn't start in early September, which some years we just don't really get a flow at all, the bees won't find any nectar from July onwards all the way till the next year. And so our dearth, that's still only a month and a half maybe. But in the South, Cayman Reynolds talks about his flow cuts off at the latest in mid-June, and his fall flow starts in mid-September. And so that's a long 3 months of dearth where he said they have almost zero pollen, very little nectar. And so getting your bees through such a stressful time of the year for so long, it's a really challenging part of the South. In the North, our dearths aren't as long because our season isn't that long. So to sum up this video, a beekeeping season in the North is like a sprint. It's really short. Lots of things are happening the whole time. There's not much slowdown. It's just go, go, go till you get to winter. In the South, it's like a marathon. It's most of the year is bee season. You can be inspecting your hives most of the year. Everything's more spread out, and it's just challenging because you have to be more consistent over a long, long period of time. So and this is why I don't think that northern beekeeping is harder, even though we have a much more challenging winter, is, they have to deal with such a long summer season to keep their bees alive. Comment down below which one you think is harder, southern or northern beekeeping. Like and subscribe. Check me out on Instagram and Facebook at Reindeer's Bees, and I'll see you in the next one.